The WoW player base should be pretty ecstatic with the news that came out today. For those who don't live under a rock and pay attention to WoWHead, you probably noticed a just actual stream of the War Within announcements. If you've checked out YouTube, if you've looked at WoWHead, if you're in any Discords, I'm sure you've been just bombarded with different news articles about different sets that are being shown, showcasing of dungeons, different character models, possible allied races, and of course, the major thing is going to be class changes. So in this video, I want to look specifically at the Brewmaster Monk, or I guess monks in a more broad sense, the changes that they're getting in the War Within Alpha. Brewmasters, Windwalkers, and Mistweavers, the monk class as a whole has been waiting for changes for a very, very long time. There are a lot of kind of just like core issues with both the class tree as well as each of the spec trees. There are a lot of extremely dead talents. The pathing arguably is still hit or miss in a lot of areas. And overall, the class just needs objectively a rework across the board. And luckily today, about 6 hours ago at the time of recording this video, we got that announcement. So let's dive into this one. So I'm going to leave this article linked in the description below so you can check it out for yourself. There are a ton of different class changes. There have been buffs, or I guess nerfs to Unholy. There's nerfs to Vengeance. But things like Druid, Monk, Evoker are all getting a lot of different class reworks, whether it's adjustments to different talents, movements of talents, or new or removed talents in general. So let's take a look at Monk here. So this is what the old class tree, or I guess the current class tree, looks like. For those who don't play Brewmaster, or for those who don't really think about this, it's extremely rigid. You have three main ways to kind of traverse down the tree. You get a little bit cock-blocked in this area here, and you get stalled after Eye of the Tiger. A lot of talents on the left-hand side are dead. Fortifying Brew arguably isn't that great, and some of these kind of group buffs are just kind of annoying to grab, and the most notoriously horrible thing about the class tree are these statues. People have been begging for a very long time to make them baseline, and I believe that our cries have been answered. So the new class tree is going to look something like this. As you can tell, the navigation through the tree here actually allows for a little bit more horizontal or diagonal movement compared to the very rigid, basically one-dimensional movement through the tree going down these mid lanes and branching off towards the bottom. So this tree is looking a lot better. I'm going to dissect what some of the new talents are. From first glance, we can already see that Dampen Harm was removed, and we can see that like Fortifying Brew has shifted over towards the mid. We have a few more choice nodes, and the capstones all look a lot better. So let's take a look. Okay, so there's a lot of things to cover here. I'm going to try to break this up the best I can. This is somewhat of a react video, somewhat of a give my general opinion video, so we'll see how this ends up being. So first things first, crashing momentum targets you roll through are snared by 40% for 5 seconds. This is great. If we're taking a look at the class tree, if we're basing it off of icon, I'm trying to see where this is actually located. It almost looks like it's going to be part of this choice node with disable. So you're going to be able to navigate through this, and you're going to have essentially an AoE slow while you do have to roll through mobs. It does provide the class a AoE slow that doesn't require you to play things like special delivery in terms of the Brewmaster Monk, which is just great. Having utility like this, especially in Mythic Plus, which is what I'm really focused on, is great. We also have Wind's Reach. The range of disable is increased by 5 yards, and the duration of crashing momentum is increased by 3 seconds, and its snare now reduces movement speed by an additional 20%, so I'm assuming it's going to knock it up to 60, and it's going to last 3 seconds longer. That, what I'd imagine, is going to be this node right here. So you're going to be able to go down, select crashing momentum or disable if you'd like, and then you can grab the improved CC duration. This is more or less probably going to be used in PvP. For Mythic Plus, I can't imagine you would actually take this node, but we'll have to see. We also have a new one called Bounding Agility. Roll and Chi Torpedo now travel a small distance further. We'll have to see what the small distance is in terms of yardage in the game. I'm not sure if the EU players use the metric system in WoW, but I would imagine it's probably going to be increased by like 3 yards or something like that. I'd imagine based off of that, it's going to be here off of Tiger's Lust. I would imagine we're probably going to navigate around that. I don't think a lot of people would. A big reason why people don't run Chi Torpedo is because they don't like how far it shoots you forward compared to roll, and then this would actually kind of act as like a mini Chi Torpedo. More often than not, most players are going to probably path around this, but it is still a cool option. It's a good flavor choice, especially for people who are speedrunning stuff or like doing transmog runs. It's great to have extra mobility. Next, we have Jade Walk. While out of combat, your movement speed is increased by 15%. That's awesome. Now, in terms of like practicality in Mythic Plus, it's going to be fairly useful through like maybe in Mythic Plus when you're going from pack to pack in dungeons where you can't mount. If you can mount, probably not a super great talent to take. And obviously for raid, probably also not that great. I can totally see this being something you're going to use for just questing, or you're going to probably end up just swapping to this talent when you're running back to a boss after a wipe. In Mythic Plus, you probably just won't take it. It looks like it's right here, but there's definitely ways to path around it. We can path through this node here, which is actually the next one we're going to talk about, which is called Pressure Points, to get to Transcendence. So we probably don't even have to take these two nodes that we just talked about. Pressure Points. Paralysis now removes all enrage effects from its targets. So monks are now going to have access to a Soothe. Now, Paralysis, it is a fairly long cooldown. It's 30 seconds, and it only goes on one target. But I believe if we actually look at Ancient Arts, it reduces the cooldown of Paralysis by up to 15 seconds and Leg Sweep by another 5 to 10 seconds. So putting these two talents together, we're now going to see Paralysis only being a 15-second cooldown, which is going to be insane. It looks like that talent is actually going to be, I'm trying to find it. It looks like it's over here on the right-hand side for Ancient Arts. But we're going to have now a Soothe, and we're going to be able to reduce the cooldown of our CC, which is something that I personally have been kind of not complaining about, but definitely mentioning. You see a lot of things like AoE stuns like Shadow Fury, Shockwave, Chaos Nova that have like anywhere between a 30 to 45 second cooldown, and Leg Sweep is a minute. So I've been kind of advocating for a way to make Leg Sweep a shorter CD, so knocking it down 10 seconds is really good. It is one of the longer AoE stuns in the game, which is a perk of Leg Sweep, and on top of that, it is something that doesn't cost, the only thing it costs you is a global, compared to things like Chaos Nova, for example, which has a resource cost, or Shadow Fury, which has a cast time, or Shockwave, which is a frontal. So having an AoE, pretty much 360 degrees around your character, global cooldown cost for Leg Sweep, justifies having it at a higher cooldown, but I would like to see it knocked down from 60 seconds, so this is going to be really, really good, especially for Mythic Plus. Next, we have Energy Transfer. Successfully interrupting an enemy reduces the cooldown of Paralysis and roll by 5 seconds. It really looks like they're actually tackling the issue that has been brought up, especially this season after the rework to Demon Hunter, that tanks need more CC. And I think they're doing a great way at addressing that. Essentially, we gain momentum in combat by successfully interrupting things, which is going to then give us cooldown reduction on Paralysis, which will allow us to remove enrage effects. Now, obviously, this seems extremely specific to maybe like Raging Week, but we don't know what type of mobs are going to be in some of these dungeons that might have rage effects, and it's going to be great to be able to remove that. And on top of that, Paralysis is just a great way to stop a cast. It doesn't even have to make even like de-enrage something. So just being able to get cooldown reduction to continue the momentum of combat is incredible. I love this. Quick Footed. The duration of snare effects on you is reduced by 20%. Most likely, this is going to be more or less a PvP talent. This looks like it's over on the far left-hand side, towards like the quote-unquote Mistweaver side of the tree. I would imagine this is going to be more likely a PvP thing. Spirit's Essence. Transcendence transfers snares targets within 10 yards by 70% for 4 seconds when it's cast. This is very cool. While Transcendence is a fun ability and it can be useful in some situations to like negate knockbacks or to quickly dodge something, if you're cognizant of what's going to happen in the near future, now you're going to just gain a benefit from using Transcendence. And if I'm not mistaken, I glanced earlier at this. I think there's some other Transcendence-based abilities in here. So that's really cool. I'm glad that they're making Transcendence. They're incentivizing to use it, basically, to provide more CC. Peach and Prosperity. Reduces cooldown of Ring of Peace by 5 seconds, and Song of Chi-Chi's cast time is reduced by 0.5 seconds. So Song of Chi-Chi now will be a pretty quick cast, so it shouldn't interrupt the flow of combat. We very rarely use Song of Chi-Chi because it competes with Ring of Peace, and Ring of Peace is just really, really strong, especially for Mythic Plus. But having the reduced cooldown on it is something I can't really complain about. That looks like it's going to be right here underneath this choice node. This choice node is the Ring of Peace and Song of Chi-Chi. Then we have Swift Art. Roll remove snare effects once every 30 seconds. This is fine. Looking at this tree, it might be one of those things that we're kind of forced to take at some point. It looks like that is down here, which is going to allow us to maybe navigate to our capstone nodes. It's a possible choice. It actually looks like, or is that the capstone? Never mind, I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, Celestial Determination. While your Celestial is active, you cannot be slowed below 90% of normal movement speed. This is great. Seems more like a PvP type of thing. kind of broken for Windwalker, honestly. Or even Mistweaver. I don't think it's going to be that great for Brewmaster. I'm looking for where that note is. It looks like it's going to be right here on the right-hand side, coming off of Dance or the improved Touch of Death. Are we going to take it? Depends on the dungeon. But I don't think so. It looks like we're actually going to be able to navigate around it. Based off of this tree, we're going to probably be ignoring it, I'd imagine. Chi Proficiency. Magical damage done increased by 2 to 4%, and healing done increased by 2 to 4%. I'm trying to find it. Is that what this is? I would imagine that that's what this note is. So for Brewmaster specifically, this is going to increase things like Breath of Fire, and that's really, is that it? Most of our stuff is physical damage, isn't it? I mean, like things like Charred Passions, of course, will do more damage, and of course we're going to be getting more healing from things like Celestial Fortune. I'd imagine it would work with all healing sources. So not a bad talent. It looks like we're going to need to use this to get to our 2 different capstones down here. So I would like to think that we're going to be probably playing this Chi Proficiency. We also have Healing Winds. Transcendence Transfer immediately heals you for 15% of your maximum health. This is kind of a flavor thing. You're never going to rely on this. It's too small of a heal. It's like relying on Healing Elixir. Just not very useful. It also takes the global to use, but with how Stagger works, sometimes you're going to be using Transcendence while you're low health to avoid some type of ability. It's going to be nice to have like a little additional heal here. I don't know if we're going to talent into it necessarily. It's probably going to be, once again, better for PvP for people who are looking for an out to hide or bind a pillar or whatnot. So still, I'm really excited about a lot of these talents. Are they going to be that practical for like the things that I enjoy, which is Mythic Plus and a little bit of rating? Probably not so much, but it's looking good. Martial Instincts. So I'm going to imagine this is going to be the reverse of the Chi Proficiency. So it's going to increase your physical damage done by 2% and avoidance increased by 2%. Now it's weird because it doesn't have the splits here, but it is a 2-point choice node. So I think it's 2 and 4. Most likely, if we had a choice, we'd probably prefer to play into physical because it'll be an overall better damage increase. But having the increased healing done with also a little bit of magic damage isn't a bad idea either. Lighter than air. Roll causes you to become lighter than air, allowing you to double jump to dash forward a short distance once within 5 seconds. Wait, that's so nuts. Monks are getting, and they don't need it, but they're gaining so much more mobility for some reason. I'm not against it, but this is amazing. Monks are going to be able to double jump. I don't know if it's going to actually allow us to double jump or if pressing spacebar twice is going to just provide us like a little like a Fell Rush type ability or like movement. We'll have to see. Flow of Chi. This looks like it's going to be a capstone. Above 90% health, movement increased by 5%. This bonus stacks with similar effects. Between 90 and 35, damage taken reduced by 5%. This very much seems like a Brewmaster effect because in Raid you'll probably be above 90 a lot. And then the DR between 90 and 30. I mean, it's going to be solid all around regardless. Below 35% health, healing increased by 10%. This is solid. Very good baseline, especially for Mythic Plus. Not that you're often below 35% health, but definitely you're always sitting in the range between like 90 and 35. Like you're probably in this range 60 to 70% of the time because of how Stagger works. Very good capstone. Another capstone here is the Transcendence Linked Spirits. Transcendence now tethers your spirit onto one ally for an hour. Use Transcendence to teleport to your ally's location. So it sounds like it's going to train or change how Transcendence works. So instead of setting down a Transcendence and then porting to the location where you dropped it, it's just going to port you back to your ally. I think this is a little bit more PvP focused. I don't trust my group members enough in Raid or Mythic Plus to teleport to their location, but it's a very cool niche thing, and it builds on the already interesting Transcendence talents that they've already added to this new tree rework. Another capstone it looks like on a choice node is going to be Rushing Reflexes. Your heightened reflexes allow you to react swiftly to presence of enemies, causing you to quickly lunge at the nearest enemy in front of you within 10 yards after you roll. That's interesting. I wonder how that's going to work. This almost feels like they're just kind of trying to make you feel like you're playing Plunderstorm. That's what this feels like. I don't know how this is going to work. It sounds cool. Is it worth a capstone choice? Maybe if this does a little bit of damage or something? I'm not sure if this does damage or not. I feel like a lot of this, yeah, I don't know. I feel like this might do damage to something that you charge to. But I do like that they're adding Clash here. So they're on the same choice node as Rushing Reflexes. We are getting Clash again. I've been begging for this. It is currently available in the spec tree for Brewmaster, but it's almost impossible to pick up because you just can't justify the point to spend it. Clash is insanely overpowered in a lot of situations, especially on Spiteful weeks. The idea is that you like run away from a spiteful mob, and then you clash with it, and it's then going to root all of the other spiteful mobs for 4 seconds. This is such a powerful CC that Brewmasters haven't been able to utilize in Shadowlands. So I'm glad to see that they're adding it again. And then they reworked Chi Wave, it looks like. So every 15 seconds, your next Rising Sun Kick or Vivify releases a wave of Chi energy that flows through you and your foes. So it looks like instead of being an on-use ability, they are reducing and removing that kind of quote-unquote button bloat to make it just a passive off of your Rising Sun Kick, which I think is a great thing to do. I really like this, actually. It might result in an empty global every once in a while, but it shouldn't be much of an issue. If anything, this is actually technically a damage cane because you're now getting 2 globals for the price of 1. Okay, so they also removed some talents and they've also done some tuning. So there's so much to talk about here. They also did a ton of work to Windwalker and Mistweaver. I'm not going to talk about this in this video. I wanted to mostly focus on the class talents as well as kind of my thoughts about it affecting Brewmaster. And this video is getting to be 18 minutes long. So Dampen Harm moved to Brewmaster baseline, assuming that it's going to actually be baseline and not in the talent tree, which I'd prefer. So we're getting a free cooldown on a 2-minute CD, so I can't really complain. Summon White Tiger was moved to Windwalker baseline, and Summon Black Ox Statue is now Brewmaster baseline, which all around is just really good. Black Ox Statue, very niche. Not a lot of times we actually want to use it outside of a couple of raid scenarios, but having this is really good for dungeons where certain abilities will target pets. This counts as a pet, so if you place this down, you can technically eat and absorb some damage through Black Ox Statue. Last but not least, let's talk about some of the class and talent tuning. Elusive Mist now reduces the damage of you and your target by 6. Was only 3, so this is a good buff. Vivify healing increased by 40% and cost reduced to 3% of base mana was 3.4. So this is a nice little change. Now this seems like it's mostly affecting Mistweaver. I'm not sure if this is going to affect the energy cost of it for obviously the melee specs. Bounce Back now triggers at 12% health, was 20, and reduces damage by 20% for a 1 talent point, was 2. So they've made it where Bounce Back requires you to be a lower health, which is a slight nerf, but it now straight up reduces it by 20% instead of being 10 and 20, and it's only going to cost you 1 point instead of 2. So it's just easier traversing of the talent tree while still kind of maintaining that benefit. It's one of those things that I'm not really sure how it's going to actually play out until I can test it. Bounce Back wasn't a very popular talent outside of like niche raid encounters for progression. We also have Chi Burst. Damage increased by 160% and healing increased by 53. This might make it a valuable option going forward for like group healing and a little bit of burst damage. Again, something that we're going to have to test, and I'm not sure which specs are going to prefer. I know Windwalker ran this, but I think Mistweaver, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think Mistweaver preferred Chi Wave and so did Brewmaster. But Chi Burst now being buffed is a solid option. All right, so Fortification has been nerfed, it looks like, for Windwalker and Mistweaver. It was reducing it by basically 2 minutes, and now it's only doing it by 30 seconds. I'm not sure, though, if they've, like, reworked it in any regard, but this seems like a nerf, more or less. Fast Feet now only requires 1 talent instead of 2, so easier navigation. Fatal Touch now only requires 1, so this is a really good change. Damage increased by 5 for 30 seconds after being cast. So it looks like it reads, it's going to still reduce it by 120 seconds, which is 2 minutes, which actually sounds insane. That means that Fatal Touch is only going to be 1, but I feel like that's wrong. I'm going to have to look at the actual tree here. All right, anyways, Grace the Crane, increased healing by 6 for 1 talent point, was 8 for 2. So slight nerf, but again, only costing 1 talent point means we get more talent options. Iron Shell Brew now increases your maximum health and damage reduction by 10%, was armor and dodge. So I think this is a much better change. Iron Shell Brew was essentially useless, even for Brewmaster, because armor and dodge value, it wasn't worth just the shorter cooldown. Resonant Fist now requires only 1 point, and Save Them All only requires 1 point. So this is better, assuming that the values are going to stay as if it's a 2-point node. And then Tiger Tail Sweep now increases the range by 4 yards for 1 talent point. Still kind of a dead talent. I don't really know why you need that big of a range, maybe in PvP, but overall, it seems like there's a couple of nerfs in here, a couple of buffs, but the reduction in talent point cost means that there's a lot more talents that we can pick up and navigate through. So basically, I think we're going to be ignoring some of these talents, and we'll probably be picking up something like this and this for Mythic Plus. We'll probably want Detox or here. I forgot what this talent's called. I think it's called Ancient Arts. So Ancient Arts Detox will probably be preferred over Bounding Agility and Jade Walk. But we're going to have to see. I'm going to actually jump over to the talent calculator to see if it's available. And I'm going to try to walk through what I think a build might look like. So I believe there's beta. And if we come to tools, there should be a talent calculator for Monk. And if I come to Brewmaster, this should be updated with the new tree. And we're going to have to choose our hero towns, which I'm not going to do now. Okay, so this is kind of zoomed out. Let me try to zoom in here. Oh, that's a little too much. So as a Brewmaster, it looks like we're starting with Paralysis and Rising Sun Kick. So our first point, we're probably going to choose into, it depends, like when you're leveling, it doesn't really matter, but like Fast Feet is always going to be a good play. Tiger's Lust will be a good play. Calming Presence, having a DR is going to be a solid play as well. We're going to want Grace of the Crane to have all increased healing taken by 4%. Most likely, we're probably not going to want Jade Walk or Bounding Agility, like I said before. Pressure points, most likely for pathing, we'll probably take. Let me see where we're at, though. So if I go Spear Hand Strike, and if I go Ancient Arts here, we are left at 7 points, and we need to spend, I believe, 12 to get to the next row. So we're probably going to take, oh, actually, no, I lied. 8 points. So we have Detox. So after this, we're probably going to want to grab Chi Wave for sure. Improved Touch of Death could be an option, but I'm not sure if I've never liked Improved Touch of Death. But to navigate down through the middle of the tree is kind of where we want to go. So we're definitely going to need to take Transcendence Transfer. We do have Resonant Fists. And honestly, Yu'lon's Grace has been really good. Diffuse Magic is good in these situations, especially if you know how to use this to gain damage. But we're going to say Yu'lon's Grace. I believe Ring of Peace will probably be what we want to play. I'm not sure if we want Peace and Prosperity. Obviously, having the cooldown reduction on Ring of Peace will be good. Fortifying Brew is a good defensive. I mean, okay, I shouldn't say good defensive. It is a defensive option, and we can buff it through Iron Shell or Expeditus. So let's go. How many more points do we need to spend? We need to get to 20, right? So we have to spend 5 more points. Now, personally for me, I kind of really like Chi Torpedo or Celerity. You don't necessarily need it, but getting the extra charge of roll is kind of gonna, it's gonna be nice. And it looks like they removed the option from the left side of the tree that we used to have. So if you like roll and you want an extra charge, we'll probably go Celerity. If you like the speed boost from Chi Torpedo, we might do that instead. For this case, I'm gonna do Celerity. I do want to get, oh, it looks like Dampen Harm is in this tree though. I thought it was moved to baseline. So if that's the case, there's 3 ways that we can get here. We either have to use Spirit Essence, which is fine, like it's a slow. We can increase the range of our leg sweep, which arguably could be good if the mobs are fairly spread out, or we can go Improved Touch of Death. I'm not sure what we would actually grab here though. I feel like this might depend on the situation, but I think Spirit Essence might be better. And then let's just grab Dance of Wind, assuming Dampen Harm will be baseline for the Brewmaster. All right, so we need to spend 2 more points, it looks like. So Vigorous Expulsion is probably going to be the play. And then arguably, if you want healing, though I'm not a fan of it, it's the Vivicious Vivification. The problem with this is it still costs energies, which can energy starve the Brewmaster Monk in some scenarios. So I think Energy Transfer could be good to grab. We do have a free point to spend here, though. So we could go Vivification, we could go Energy Transfer, we could go Leg Sweep, or we could go Improved Touch of Death. Those are kind of the 3 that I'm thinking. You could also choose Pressure Points if you need the Enrage spell. Actually, let's assume that we're going to need it. Let's do it. All right, next we have Summon Black Ox Statue. I think this is baseline for Brewmaster, so I don't really know what's going on. So this should be baseline, so I don't know what's going to be here then instead. So first things first, we're probably going to want Strength in Spirit or Profound Rebuttal. I think it depends on the scenario. I think in high keys where you're constantly lower on health, this might be better, but the critical healing also in like lower keys might be fine too. But I'm going to go Strength and Spirit. We're probably going to want double Chi Proficiency, and then I think Flow of Chi is going to be the play for the Brewmaster. I don't know if, like, Lighter Than Air might be fun to play with, but I don't know how practical it's going to be in Mythic Plus, or if it's going to be worth the capstone point. And now we do need to get to Martial Instincts, and we have 7 points to spend. So in order to get here, we're probably going to go with Expeditus, Fortification, Martial Instincts twice, and then Fatal Touch. So this is going to be like a 5% damage gain after you can cast it, which actually might justify using Improved Touch of Death. Possibly. So I didn't read this right when we were reading through the talents, but Touch of Death increases your damage by 5% for 30 seconds after you cast it, and its cooldown is reduced by 90 seconds. So it's a 3-minute cooldown. It's now reduced to 90, so every minute and a half for basically the next 30 seconds after you cast it, you're going to be doing 30% or 5% more damage for 30 seconds. Now, with this, it can almost make Monk like an Execute class, because once a boss is sub 15% health, you can touch of death, and then for 30 seconds, you're just going to be dealing more damage. So this might be a good play in single target, but for Mythic Plus, I believe we might want like something like Clash. Bounce Back might not be a bad play, but I'm trying to think if it's even worth trying to get down to Transcendence Link Spirits. I don't know if this capstone is actually worth it. So I think the last like 2 points can kind of be spent wherever, which actually really frees up the tree. We can go Bounce Back for a little bit DR. We can go Improve Touch of Death for more damage. If we wanted a little bit bigger range on our Tiger Tail Sweep, we can do that. You can also play down into Lighter Than Air to have that dash forward with a little extra mobility. There's a lot going on here that I really like. So the tree just overall seems a lot better. We do, like I said, we have 2 points to spend. We're currently at level 66, which is great. And there haven't been any changes to the actual spec tree for Brewmaster, but I'm very, very fond of this. The only thing that I'm a little concerned of is that Summon Black Ox Statue is still present here, which I don't think is actually the case, or they meant to add it here. Because if we come back, we can actually see this little like statue thing in the middle. This might be whatever statue your spec has. And if that's the case, then you're just going to probably just navigate around it unless you need it. I think that's the case. I would imagine if that is like if it's going to remain here as like quote unquote baseline, it's going to be in the class tree. It's going to be a choice, and it's going to change based on the spec you're currently in. Overall, though, very happy with this. I've seen some great Mistweaver and Windwalker feedback about these changes as well. Maybe I'll cover them. I'm not like a Windwalker savant or a Mistweaver savant. I'm barely a Brewmaster player. I'm not super knowledgeable on like Mistweaver, for example, and while I do dabble in Windwalker, I don't theorycraft a lot about it, but generally speaking, just even looking at the picture, the pathing looks a lot better. And I've only heard good things about the Windwalker tree, so maybe I'll talk about that in the near future. Anyways, sorry for the long, ranty video. I'm going to cut it here. I will leave this link in the description below. There's a ton of changes coming, and yeah, hopefully you guys like them. Anyways, massive shout out to my Patreon supporters. I hope you guys are staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.